All right, let's do this thing. Hey, welcome. I'm RJ Tempo. I'm going to cut right to the chase. I'm here to talk about some of my favorite albums from 2023, and I'm going to kick it off with my honorable mentions. If you enjoyed any of these albums on my honorable mentions list, then you will certainly enjoy at least one of the albums in my top 25. We have Heavener by Invent Animate, Ruckus by Movements, The War of Being by Tesseract, Terrasite by Cattle Decapitation, Fauna by Haken, The Sin of Human Frailty by End, Enigmatic Society by Dinner Party, Birds, Bees, The Clouds and the Trees by Harrison, Happy Music by Super Shy, which is a side project of Tom Misch. If you like him, you should check it out. A New Tomorrow by Zulu, Ketramine by Ketramine, otherwise known as Ketranada and Amine, Like by Ice Spice, unironically, Flesh and Blood by Judiciary, Sundial by No Name, Quaranta by Danny Brown, and last but certainly not least, Petrodragonic Apocalypse or Dawn of Eternal Night and Annihilation of Planet Earth and the Beginning of Merciless Damnation by King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. So yeah, I'm not going to give my thoughts on all these albums. We'd be here all day if I did. I enjoyed all of them. There were tracks I still revisit, but as an entire album experience, it did not have as much of a lasting impact on me as these next 25 records. I really want to hear your thoughts, not on these albums, but on what your favorites were. I'm always looking for recommendations, and if I see an overwhelming amount of people talking about a certain album that I haven't heard or that I didn't really give a second chance, I'm going to go back and listen to it. So please start a dialogue. Keep it respectful, obviously. Here we go. I'm interrupting myself to tell you Happy New Year. And sorry this came out so late. I know I haven't uploaded in a couple weeks. This took a lot of editing, a lot of time, a lot of effort went into this. So appreciate you watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed. If you want to see more of this type of content, please interact with this video. Help it, get as many views and reach as many people as possible. I'd much rather be drumming. I'd much rather be drumming and making drum videos than doing this kind of thing, but I wanted to give it a try. Wanted to talk about some of my favorite albums of the year. So that's it. Thanks. At number 25, I'm here to talk about Sylosis' new album, A Sign of Things to Come. A metal band that is inspired by the greats. A metal band that I'm pretty sure strictly uses standard tuning and 6 strings, not 7 or 8, and brings a fusion of thrash metal and death metal in a way that is, I think, accessible for old heads in the metal genre, but also anyone kind of cutting their teeth on modern metal, especially if they're looking for something that is really focused on the riffs, the breakdowns. So that's Sylosis at number 25.
I started playing drums in 8th grade because I felt this yearning for percussion. My mom got me a drum set on Craigslist, and I never looked back.
At number 24, I want to talk about Dana and Alden and their album, Quiet Music for Young People. If you follow Gucci Pineapple on any of the social media sites, he is the drummer in this group and one of the two brothers. It's not taking itself too seriously. It's lo-fi jazz. A lot of it's instrumental, but occasionally they bring in some vocal features, which on some tracks like Baja really work for me. On other ones, I'm not as big of a fan of. I find myself returning to a lot of the instrumentals on this album, but I do think that it is a quiet, pensive, and very carefree new age jazz album, and something that is very easy to just kind of throw on in the background, but can also reward a really intentional listen if you're looking to kind of dive into it a bit more. And that's number 24, Dana and Alden, Quiet Music for Young People. At number 23, it's going to be August Burns Red with their new album, their 10th studio album, Death Below. I'm a really big August Burns Red fan. By your 10th album, I would expect a band like this to kind of stick with what's been working for them, and frankly, they do. I think anyone who's been a fan of their early work and even their more recent albums is going to find something to like on this one. I think there are a couple of tracks, such as Backfire and Ancestry, which features Jesse Leach of Killswitch Engage, that are bangers of the highest order when it comes to August Burns Red songs. And there's no weak songs in the bunch, but I feel some of it, especially towards the back half, is a little forgettable, but that still means that they're kind of operating at that level that we've come to expect from them, which is very highly consistent quality progressive metalcore, whatever you want to call it. So that's August Burns Red at number 23. At number 22, it's going to be Kali Uchis and her last album, Red Moon in Venus. I think one of the smoothest, suavest, sexiest R&B records of the year. She is a phenomenal vocalist that effortlessly jumps between singing in English and Spanish over a variety of R&B and hip-hop beats and production, a lot of live instrumentation, a very warm and dry aesthetic throughout. Make sure that you stick until the end. The second to last track, Moonlight, was one of the biggest hits off of the album and one of the bops I find myself returning to a lot. But then the last track as well, Happy Now, leaves a smile on my face, and it makes me feel happy now. And the end of that song and the end of the record, but literally brings the sounds of oceans crashing on the wave, or I'm sorry, ocean waves crashing on the shore in a way that is just very nice. How's that for a good detailed analysis for you? Anyway, just listen to it. At number 21, it's the Zenith Passage and their album, Datalysium. If you enjoy the Faceless, especially Planetary Duality, or if you like any kind of technical death metal, this is an album that you have to check out. The reason I mentioned the Faceless is actually a few of the members from those early years are in this band, and you can hear that influence in a way that is very rewarding for people who were a big fan of the stuff that they were putting out around 15 years ago. As a whole, I would say this album is a flurry of notes. It's very melodic, coming from the guitar, just arpeggios and crazy runs all throughout. The drumming is wickedly fast, which is why I like listening to it so much, because I love that shit. Honestly, it's tech death metal perfection, or at least the closest thing to it that I've heard in the last 5 years. If you dig stuff from, again, the Faceless, but also like Necrophagist, Arcspire, you have to hear this. Very interesting and thought-provoking lyrics over just a mind fuck of an instrumental on the back. Crazy stuff. At number 20, it's Veil of Maya and their new album, Mother. They took about 6 years to make this record since their last one, and what they brought to the table this time was a lot more what I would call glitch core, which is to say that they're throwing in a lot of electronic sounds on top of, your typical guitar and drums and bass in a way that makes it sound like it's short-circuiting. And Veil of Maya records of old, they're bringing in a lot of crushing breakdowns, super low-tuned guitar, and a lot of screeching noises, but also a lot of really catchy choruses. It definitely brings that metalcore attitude to it, especially in songs like, Red Fur and Godhead. But if you get to the latter half of the album, shit gets really, really heavy. Synthwave Vegan, which I covered, is one of my favorite songs of the year. Death Runner after that, and then whatever the last song is called, man. The breakdown that closes the whole thing is crazy. So if you're into that kind of stuff, check it out. That's Veil of Maya at number 20. At number 19, it's going to be Kenny Mason and his new album, 6. Kind of snuck up on me. I really enjoyed Kenny Mason, and especially his feature on the latest JID record. Hadn't heard any of his solo stuff before this one came out, and it's Atlanta rap at its finest, honestly. He is just flowing effortlessly over these very bass-heavy beats, and then simultaneously throwing in pop punk and emo songs in a way that does not sound out of place. I'm not quite sure how he pulled that off. It's pretty wild. And even in the songs that aren't necessarily pop punk or emo, more the rap influence stuff, he's still throwing electric guitar in the beats. It might be a little bit lower in the mix, and you definitely have that 808 bass and hi-hats really pumping through, but his flows are amazing. He's switching up the rhythm and the cadence. He's not overactive or over hyper, but he's not, falling asleep at the mic either. I think he strikes a really nice balance in a way that sounds effortless and relaxed, but very attentive as well. I find myself listening to it a lot more than I expected. That's Kenny Mason at number 19. At number 18, it's going to be Hiromi and her album, Sonicwonderland. She's one of my favorite living piano players, a jazz fusion legend that I've been enjoying for over a decade now. She works with some incredible musicians. She herself is a piano player, but the album has a lot more than that going on. Tons of horns, trumpet, sax. The drumming is incredible. Some, crazy guitar stuff going on as well in the background. But for the most part, she's kind of bouncing between these very kind of chaotic fusion jams that, sounds inspired from Return to Forever or Herbie Hancock stuff back in the day. But then she's also got these very thoughtful, laid back piano ballads, and she's switching between the two very nicely. The synth sounds that she's getting on some of these tracks sound straight out of late 90s video game music, but obviously the quality is a lot better than the 8-bit stuff back then. And it's just very fun. It's a very fun, free sounding record, and one of my favorite jazz albums of the year. So that's Hiromi at number 18. At number 17, I have Sampha and his latest album, Lahai. Hope I'm saying that correctly. It is a ethereal, dreamy R&B rap record. Kind of hard to pin it down genre-wise. It has a lot of strings, a lot of piano, very, very piano heavy on the instrumental. He is singing better than just about anybody, honestly. If you've heard him on features for like Kendrick Lamar and a lot of other folks, you know what he can bring to the table vocally, and he's harmonizing with himself on just about every track. Really, really well written, really well performed. An album that was made very intentionally, a little bit of spoken word thrown in there, and it's a very immersive and pleasing album to listen to, one that puts a smile on my face every time. So that's Sampha at number 17.
I was sucking my daddy when I was 7 years old. A field of them.
At number 16, it's going to be Earl Sweatshirt and The Alchemist with their latest album, Voir. Bro, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's effortless. It's understated. It's down to earth. None of it is flashy. Whereas a lot of other rap albums, you have beat switches in every song, which, don't get me wrong, I love. The Alchemist is so good at producing a beat that he can just loop 8 bars for minutes and you will not get tired of it. And Earl Sweatshirt doesn't need to have a hook or, a feature vocalist bringing that pop sensibility to it. It's basically just him outside of 2 Vince Staples features that are very well executed. And on most of these songs, on most of my favorite songs, it's just Earl spitting bars for 3 minutes, but it sounds so easy and so free as if it were made over the span of a couple hours. Honestly, it's got to be one of the chillest, vibiest albums of the year, in my opinion. That's Earl and Alchemist at number 16. At number 15, it's going to be Lil Yachty and his psychedelic rock hip-hop crossover album, Let's Start Here. I think that he brought some phenomenal collaborators together to whip up some pretty great psychedelic, Pink Floyd-inspired rock jams. He's bringing in some great features as well. Drive Me Crazy, which was one of the biggest hits off of the album and definitely my favorite song on the album, has an amazing chorus. As a whole, it is a very cohesive sounding album that pulls you in from the get-go. The Black Seminole is like a 7-minute opening track that really iterates what he's trying to do here, and he's making it very clear from the very beginning that he's trying something new, and I think that we should be rewarding him for it. I like it more than anything else he's ever put out. It's very clear that based on some of the more recent singles he's dropped, that this is not the only thing that he's going to be doing going forward. He still has that Lil Boat sound to him. But I'm always interested in when popular mainstream artists switch up the genre, bring in a new style that maybe wasn't something that they had ever done before. It's pretty trippy, much like the album cover would have you think. And I think it's worth checking out regardless of what kind of music you listen to. So check it out. That's Lil Yachty at number 15. At number 14, it's Humanity's Last Breath with their album Ashen. We talked about the Zenith passage. If the Zenith passage is staccato, Humanity's Last Breath is legato. If the Zenith passage is melodic, Humanity's Last Breath is the opposite of melodic. It's one of the heaviest things I've heard ever. It is slow, it is crushing, it is brutal, it sounds like prime evil. It is so distorted. It is horrific. It is scary to listen to. It's like the scariest album that I've heard in a while. Not because it's just like berating you with like these crazy fast blast beats and riffage sections. It's actually pulling back on a lot of what they could be doing and just suspending you in this chaotic, distorted, evil sounding energy. You have these insane low growls over these screeching guitar tones, a little bit of strings thrown in on the back. Mostly there's no singing, but when they bring them in some cases through a featured choir, it is not to give you any levity or melody in the sense that you might feel any kind of resolution. No. It's dissonant throughout. It sounds like they are a harbinger for some ancient Lovecraftian horror that's just gonna like swallow up your entire village. It's slow, it's crushing, it's distorted. I absolutely loved it. I'm listening to it like every week, especially when I'm working or working out. It's really great for that kind of stuff. If you need a little push in your system, check it out. That's Humanity's Last Breath at 14. At number 13, it's going to be Night Verses and their album, Every Sound Has a Color in the Valley of Night. This is one of the best drum performances of the year. It is an instrumental, progressive, metal, alternative, experience, whatever you want to call it. It's kind of hard to define by genre because in one case, it's very cinematic. You have some movie dialogue sampled in there. It can get pretty heavy, but also a bit of like a math rock influence. Very, very, very melodic. The guitar is keeping busy. The drums are so busy. He's one of the most creative and expressive drummers around in the world, I think. And it just kind of keeps you hooked till the end. It's not an album that overstays its welcome. It gives you a lot of new things to chew on. It has a cohesive kind of production to it, but at the same time, every track definitely has its own sound to it, which I appreciate as well. So that's Night Verses at number 13. At number 12, maybe one of the lesser known acts on my list, it's Aviations and their album Luminaria. All of the prog metal heads, you gotta check this one out. If you like Haken, who I mentioned in my honorable mentions, if you like Between the Buried and Me, if you remember a band Native Construct from back in the day, this is definitely for you. It is a group that really lets every member shine. Also one of the best drum performances of the year. Beautiful vocals. The piano is stellar on this thing. The guitar is throwing in some great melodic work and some riffs. But honestly, as far as metal goes, it's on the lighter side. Most of the tracks you could more accurately describe as like progressive rock. Dream Theater fans probably would be into this as well. But there's a couple tracks that chef up the heavy riffs and breakdowns as well. It's definitely an album that you need to be into to get through the runtime. It's a pretty long one. You definitely got some 10 plus minute tracks there at the end, but I think prog metal fans are going to be really interested in this one. I really have to shout out again the piano work on this entire record. It's cascading, it's beautiful, and it doesn't take over the song at its core. In fact, it is playing a very crucial part in supporting the vocal melody, and also kind of guiding the rhythm section through a lot of different time signature changes and weird polyrhythm stuff, which I obviously get a lot of enjoyment out of. So that's Aviations at number 12. At number 11, it's Paramore with This Is Why. Probably the band I've liked the most in my life on this entire list, considering that I bought Riot IRL at a Barnes & Noble when I was in 4th grade. Which was a long time ago. Paramore has always been a band that's been willing to evolve their sound incrementally, right? You have the straight up emo pop punk days back in the 2000s. You have kind of the synth pop and, dance pop sound from After Laughter. And then they took a very long break before bringing this new record to us, which does a couple of things. It has some grunge in it. It's got your typical pop punk sound. It has a bit of more, I would say, like indie and alt rock thrown in there as well. Hayley Williams is a magnificent vocalist. Every member of the band is just supporting her. It is a melodic and vocally driven album. I don't have these crazy drum parts as much as you have just a really solid pocket. And it creates for a lot of memorable choruses that I'm often singing to myself. And if we were including the remix, this would be much higher on the list. I'm not going to count it. It's a standalone album. But what they did quite recently was released another version of this album where every single song, all 10 or 11 tracks, are remixed by people like Remy Wolf, Domi and JD Beck, Wet Leg, and no disrespect to Paramore, some of these are better than the original. And it's not just because you have another person singing Hayley's parts. They are like reimagining and re-recording a lot of the instrumentals as well, giving it an entirely new taste. And it's a really, really nice, little bonus addition to this album. If I were including that, this would be in the top 10. But great album, one of their best. Check it out. That's Paramore at number 11. At number 10, it's going to be Slowthai and his new album, Ugly. It's not really a rap album. Slowthai's a rapper, and he's rapping on it. But instrumentally, this is a grunge and punk album that is vocally focused on grief, guilt, depression, mental health issues in general. You can tell that this is someone who has dealt with a lot of trauma and is still processing it, a lot of self-doubt and self-loathing. But musically, I mean, man, I've never heard someone rap over like grunge and punk as well as this. The rawness and authenticity of it speaks volumes. And even if it's a hard album to listen to in some cases, I think it's really rewarding, and you should definitely check it out. That's Slowthai at number 10. Number 9, it's Mckinley Dixon and his album, Beloved Paradise Jazz. It's just the best jazz rap album of the year. I'm not going to take any questions on that. It's short and to the point, live, instrumentals, all jazz, all the time, with the exception of Mezzanine Trippin', which has like a haunting beat that you can imagine Pusha T rapping over. I really like that he included this one, especially in the story that he's telling, the distortedness of the situation that he's describing on that song. A lot of this has to do with growing up in poverty and understanding the legacy of systematic racism in the U.S., its impact on people and families. Mckinley is so passionate and so cathartic on the mic that it's just... it's an album that really grabs you, I guess. This is one that I listened to 3 times in a row when I first heard it, which was a nice memory. So definitely check this out if you like jazz rap. That's Mckinley Dixon at number 8. At number 8, it's Dying Wish, Symptoms of Survival. Look, you don't have to reinvent the wheel to make it on my top 25 list. And you don't even have to genre fuse or push creative boundaries to make it on my top 10. If you like early 2000s metalcore, this sounds like it came from 2003 and produced by Adam D of Killswitch.
I mean, we leaned into the Killswitch like influence a lot on the record.
It's sounding old and new at the same time is a very hard thing to pull off. It is a straight to the point, gut punch, hardcore record. Metalcore, kind of hardcore. Who even knows anymore? I'm not going to get into that whole genre debate. Emma is a phenomenal vocalist. She's screaming in most of the songs, but every once in a while when she's singing melodically, it works really, really, really well. The guitar riffs are just better described by a punch than any words. Nothing on this album is frivolous. It's just a down-to-earth fucking metal record, and something that you can very easily bang your head to no matter what kind of heavy music you're into. And it's one that I just keep spinning over and over and over and over again. And I definitely enjoy drumming along to this one, which, you know, brownie points for that. At number 7, it's Sleep Token. Take Me Back to Eden. Kind of a controversial act in the metal world right now. Every couple of years, there's always been a new band that comes around that uses pop production, whether it's 808s, your kind of synth, auto-tune, catchy choruses, or just, you know, the aesthetics and attitude of pop stars. I'm thinking about like Asking Alexandria and Sleeping with Sirens and things like that back when I was in high school. And every time this happens, the metal elites and the metal purists just come out of the woodwork to say, that's not real metal because you used autotune, or that's not real metal because you used 808s. And like, shut the fuck up, honestly. If you're saying that it's not worthy of being listened to or enjoyed by metal fans, then you need to get your head out of your ass, because I'm a metal fan. I like grindcore and death metal and deathcore, and I really like this Sleep Token album. And a lot of people who weren't really that into metal are using this as a gateway band, which is a good thing. Let me talk about the actual music. Can we talk about the actual music? I've been dying to talk about the actual music. Okay, yes, there's a lot of pop in there. There's 808s. There's piano ballads. He kind of sounds like the guy from Bastille. People say they're like the Imagine Dragons of metal. I'm not really going to argue with that part. Do they also have tracks like Voir that sound like it could be out of like a Deftones Meshuggah crossover? Yes. Are there crazy breakdowns in this? Yes. Is he screaming his head off sometimes? Yes. Are there good riffs? Yes. Would I call it a metal album? Yes. Would I call it a metal album with pop and R&B and electro influences? Yes. And I think that's a good thing. If you already decided you're not a Sleep Token fan, I'm not going to try to convince you. You're too stuck in your ways. Whatever. Leave that shit behind in 2023. I'm going into 2024 listening to this album and enjoying every track on it. maybe besides Do You Wish That You Loved Me. That's like the one skip for me, but I digress. That's Sleep Token at number 7. At number 6, it's the catchiest album of the year, Pinkpantheress, Heaven Knows. This is the only album that I recorded 2 covers off of, Mosquito and Boys a Liar Part 2, featuring Ice Spice, which you have heard. I don't mean my cover. I mean, you've heard the song. Everyone heard that song. It was everywhere this summer. But what do I like about this album? Well, I've been a Pinkpantheress fan for a while. She is continuing her kind of breakbeat, drum and bass inspired hyperpop, I guess. But I think she really honed in on her songwriting skills. The production is immaculate. Every single song has a catchy hook. I mean, literally at one point I had 6 of these songs stuck in my head over the course of like a 3-day period. That's not a joke. There's really good features on this, though none of them steal the spotlight, let's be honest, outside of maybe Ice Spice on the one song. But they work well, and I think there's a lot of tracks that don't have features that work even better. The Isle is certainly one of my favorites. There's acoustic guitar in like every single track. Some excellent bridges on this thing. It's not just like playing into the trends. It's not just playing into, oh, the song has to be 2 minutes and only have a chorus. Just fun to listen to from front to back. I love this thing. I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm just a big fan. That's Pinkpantheress at number 6. At number 5, it's Yusef Dayes and his new album, Black Classical Music. Another one of my favorite drum performances of the year. It's jazz, it's funk, it's everything that I was hoping it would be. I've been a fan of his for a couple of years. I especially like what he did with Tom Misch on the album What Kind of Music in 2020 or 2021. He's a drummer's drummer for sure. He's really a drummer's drummer. Nothing that they're doing on this album is overly technical or complicated, but there's a lot to chew on from a percussive standpoint. So many unique sounds and little wood blocks and chimes and glockenspiels and other things that he's throwing in there, which I love. But a lot of it really just comes down to the groove and some really great vocal features as well. I love it. I really love it. It's something that I listened to a shit ton back in the summer. So even if I haven't been listening to it as much recently, I had to give it its flowers for that. So that's Yusef Dayes at number 5. At number 4, it's Boygenius and their album The Record. Saddest album of the year, happiest album of the year, somehow both. I mean, they've just been having an absolute banner year. Phoebe Bridgers, Lucy Dacus, and Julian Baker, all incredible vocalists, guitar players, songwriters, and musicians. I had the joy of seeing them perform most of this album live in New York back in June or July, and they just did it to perfection. In terms of how it sounds on the record, you open with a a cappella 3-way harmony that just broke me down. It broke me as a person, and then the next song came back and it just built me up again. And then, Cool About It comes on. I'm like, oh, I'm absolutely fucking devastated. How can I ever even, walk again? And then the next, Not Strong Enough comes on. I'm like, oh, okay, that's how. So it's really pushing all the extremes of emotional capability. If you try to listen to the lyrics and really empathize with what's going on, from a musical standpoint, fine, maybe it's not your thing, but just like read it. It's pure poetry, man. And phenomenal melodies, really well packaged, very homey, very down to earth, very, something that you might just like hear in a bar, but not just any bar. I can't, this one just kind of makes me stammer because it's just like an emotional gut punch of an album, but in the best way possible. If you're looking for that kind of thing, check it out. That's Boygenius, The Record at number 4. At number 3, we are absolutely going to be scaring the hose because it's JPEGMAFIA and Danny Brown and their new album, Scaring the Hose. It's my favorite rap album of the year. Sorry for the spoilers. I don't have any other rap albums at number 2, number 1. You thought Drake was going to be on here? You don't know me. Okay, so they sample clapping cheeks, video games, domestic disputes, police sirens, just everything. I mean, there's nothing Peggy won't sample. And even if the only critique I have is like maybe some of the vocal mixing is a little low, I think honestly the focus here was to hit you with some of the most confusing and disjointed beats that you've ever heard that nobody else could rap on. Red Veil on the song Kingdom Hearts, Chef's Kiss, shout out to Red Veil. It's just a weird, discombobulated album that I just can't stop listening to. This is probably the one album on the list where you might need a couple listens to really get it. And that's not me saying like, oh, if you don't get it, then like you're not what, like, no, fuck that. But it's not like anything I've ever heard before. It is the most original sounding album on this list. It's the most out there, wild, forward-thinking album that I've heard maybe ever, and I just love it the more I hear it. And it's so confusing and weird and strange, but when you get to hear these songs 10, 20 times, you really start to hear and feel the big picture. And from a lyrical standpoint, a lot of it has to do with the fact that they are not conforming to standards. They are not following the trends, and they don't give a fuck if you think this sounds bad. They're going to do what they want to do, and as a musician, that's the most authentic shit you can possibly do. Make music for yourself, not for anyone else. That's what they're doing, and I fucking loved it. That's JPEGMAFIA and Danny Brown, Scaring the Hose at number 3.
Do you ever yearn?
Yearn? Do I yearn?
I yearn.
At number 2, okay, I said Pinkpantheress was the catchiest album of the year. It's a tie. The other one is TheJapaneseHouse. In the end, it always does make me cry on the floor. Here's the best way I can describe this album. It's yearning. It's sad, horny yearning for something or someone that you can't ever have in the way you truly want it. You don't have to be up against unrequited love to understand this album. From a musical standpoint, it takes the saddest concepts and delivers it in the just funnest, funkiest, grooviest way possible. It is riddled with just these springy guitar hooks, very kind of plucky, and a lot of like warm, funky drum tones, a lot of like 1975-esque production. In fact, one of the members worked on this album, so not too surprising. She has a very layered and dynamic vocal performance. Heartbreaking. You can really hear the emotion behind every single word that she's saying. It's endlessly replayable. So many melodies just stuck in my head over and over and over again. And they're not all these kind of like sad, happy, pop bangers. There's a lot of, really understated piano ballads as well, like The Closer. Just a really groovy rhythm section underneath, and she's just singing about somebody that she desperately wants to fuck. So, okay, yeah, that's TheJapaneseHouse at number 2. At number 1, it's Periphery. It's Periphery 5, Djent is not a genre. People who know me knew this was coming. Periphery is my favorite band of all time, and they have been for 10 years, 12 years, 13 years. And they would have had to massively disappoint me and everyone for this to not rank highly on my year-end list. If you don't know Periphery, okay, they are one of the greatest progressive metal bands of the last 2 decades, in my opinion. They are one of the progenitors of Djent, which they are saying is not a genre. A little bit of detail on that. Djent is an onomatopoeia. It is a sound that Misha Mansour, their founding member and guitar player, used to describe the guitar tone. He said it sounds like Djent, Djent, Djent. That came out and then spawned basically people calling Djent a genre back in the early 2010s, which kind of followed them like a haunting specter because everyone said Djent sucks and Djent this and blah, blah, blah. And they said, fuck the haters. Djent is not a genre. We're a progressive metal band. I digress. This is all semantics. Let's talk about the music. What other band gives you some of the heaviest, distorted, horrific sounding songs like Everything Is Not Okay, and then follows it up with synth pop on track 5 Silhouette, and then gives you like a warm embrace of a, hard rock song on Dying Star, and then 2 10-plus minute epic prog metal closers. Oh, and on the first track, there's a 2-minute jazz interlude in the middle. Oh, and most of these songs end with about 1 to 1.5 minutes of orchestral music that just sweeps it from one to the next. It is very, very immersive. It is very fun. It is an album that you can tell they had a lot of fun making. Songs like Atropro and Zagreus are just fun, proggy metal songs with crazy guitar solos, wild polyrhythms, time changes. I do not have to talk more about Matt Halpern. He's one of my favorite drummers of all time. He's absolutely crushing it. Some of the best production I've heard on a metal album ever. Shout out to Nolly. I love this band. I really, really, really do. I've loved all of their albums. I see a very clear progression in sound and musicianship. And this is a step forward for them that I appreciate and will be appreciating for the rest of my life, like I have all of their other records. If you like Haken, Between the Buried and Me, Veil of Maya, a lot of other bands I've discussed here, you got to check this out. If you don't think you like Periphery because you didn't like them in 2012 or 2015 or 2017, just give it a try. I promise there's something in there for you because it goes all over the fucking map. Man, just some good stuff. Some really hopeful, honest, human lyrics, which I think we need right now. And also a lot of stark realization as to what the fuck is going on around us and being, justifiably upset about it. And they kind of walk from one side of that line to the other, which is something that I can relate to as someone who is continuously horrified at the state of the world, but also can't help but feel hope for a better future. Maybe kind of a grand conclusion to pull from all of this, but that's what it makes me feel. So that's what I'm going to tell you. Listen to it, please. Listen to all of these albums or one of them or like half of one of them. If you listen to one song that I talked about, I will have done my job. But more importantly, throw me a like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. You know how hard it is for us content creators to get out in the algorithm these days. I'm going to wrap this up. I've been talking for an hour. Hopefully this video is a lot shorter than that. And lastly, let me know if you enjoyed this because it's the first time I've done a video like this. Thank you. I'm going to stop rambling here. What were your favorite albums? Let me know. What's your favorite condiment to put on a sandwich? Let me know. Do you think hot dogs are sandwiches? Let me know. See ya.